Welcome to Pleasure Doing Business with You, a podcast showcasing young Black entrepreneurs who have paved their own ways to success. I'm your host, Megan Sales, business writer at Afro News and Report for America Corps member. Today we are talking to Casey Gable, owner of Divinely Crafted. Her e-commerce business sells small batch handmade products for skin and hair that are made with all natural, non-toxic, and fair trade ingredients. Listeners can use coupon code AFRONEWS to get 15% off their orders through February 15th. Hello, Casey. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, Megan. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. Can you just first kind of just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Again, my name is Casey Gable. I'm the owner and creator of Divinely Crafted. Just a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Maryland, Harford County to be exact. As of now, I live in Baltimore County. I've been living here for the past couple years. Other than that, let's see. I went to school for my first 2 years of undergrad at Howard University. That's actually where I started my business. But I ended up finishing my undergrad degree at Towson University. So I have a degree in healthcare management, and I've been working in healthcare for the past 10 years. But more recently, within the last few years, is when I officially launched my business. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today.
Awesome. And kind of going back to, as you said, you started your business while you were at Howard University. So like how and why did you first get into making hair products, especially while you were still in college?
For sure. Yeah. I started college in 2008. So in August 2008. And that was also I made a conscious decision to stop perming my hair at that time. And during that time was a big movement for a lot of Black women to stop perming their hair. So it was like almost like a revival of natural hair. And I followed a lot of people on YouTube, specifically like Hey Fran Hey and Naptural 85. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but those women were like the blueprint back then. And one of the coolest things about them was, aside from them, being gorgeous and having beautiful hair, was that they made their own products. And so, being a young Black woman at Howard University, I think it must have sparked something in me a little bit, even though I didn't necessarily act on it immediately. But I think it was just an exciting time to be a Black woman. And I think that's sort of what laid the groundwork to what I ended up doing.
And so what was like the first product that you kind of tested out with like making your own?
hmm So what I started doing, so as the relaxer started to grow out and my kinks and curls started to come out that I wasn't as familiar with, because most of us had perms all of our life at that point. I wanted to start creating something so I could do things like twist outs and braid outs. And what I was seeing online was people making what they called hair butters and body butters. So even though I was a very broke college student living in Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
the good part about being in that area versus being in Harford County, Maryland, was the access to ingredients like shea butter, like different kind of oils that I maybe not wouldn't have seen back then. You see it a lot more now. It's a lot more accessible, but the accessibility was a lot more in that area, and you could do it relatively affordably. So I found some recipes online from ladies like I mentioned earlier, and I just started mixing things up, melting things down, whipping it, seeing what the texture felt like, and really being my own experiment until I found what worked best for me. And especially during that time, there was a big, what they called like a product junkie thing going on, because so many natural hairlines were starting at that time. So it's like every time something dropped, everybody wanted to buy it, but you can only do that so much.
Yeah.
So I think it was not only the interest in it, but also just, after a while, you just had to figure it out on your own or get the money to buy the product. So I was like, I think I can do this myself. And I found that I had a natural tact for it, and I enjoyed doing it most of all.
And so when did you officially launch Divinely Crafted? And why did you also kind of just decide that you wanted to own your own business?
Sure. So I officially launched it in November of 2018. So it was a pretty big gap of time. Before that, it was something I did strictly for a hobby. I
Mhm.
also did it for a lot of my girlfriends who were also natural. So they were also sort of like my testers over the 9 to 10 year span.
Yeah.
So I officially launched it in November 2018. And I feel like there was a bunch of different motivations, but most of all, I was at a job. I mean, I'm still at the job, but I was at a job that I've been at for a while, and so you sort of get a little bit uninspired, and I think I just felt a pull that it
Mhm.
was time for me to do something more with my time and with my life, and I felt like a push to really to take that crafting seriously. And I'm very fortunate because, my family encouraged me, my friends who use my products encouraged me, my partner encouraged me. And then I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur as well. So the
Okay.
idea of starting a business, thankfully, wasn't something that I was dissuaded from. Yeah, I was
Mhm.
definitely supported in that. So really, I think just enough time passed, and I was at a point in my own life where I was ready to do something different. And thankfully, I had people that supported me along the way.
Definitely. Support is always super important when you're kind of endeavoring to open a business. What do you
Yeah.
what do you think like makes your product stand out from, competitors and things like that?
So, the body butter business in the hair and body care business is, some people would call it like a saturated market, right? Especially
Mhm.
right now. But I always think there's room for everybody. So, what I personally like to focus on with my products is creating products that are very luxurious. So, I always say a little bit goes a long way. So, you
Mhm.
can indulge yourself after a long bath, use really good quality ingredients, organic ingredients. And
Mhm.
not only are they good quality ingredients that make your skin and hair feel amazing, but I also intentionally infuse my oils with different herbs that have medicinal qualities as well. So not only do I want to give my customers the feeling of luxury, but also medicinal benefits while they use the products as well. So I use that. I try to stand out in that way. And then I also like to do unique scent combinations. One of my first scent combinations for the body butter was bergamot and cinnamon. And I didn't think that was odd, or I didn't think that was weird. But I remember my first few vending events, people were like, that's interesting. And at first they were put off by it, and then they would smell it and they would find it really interesting, and it had depth to it.
Mhm.
So I like to, when it comes to like the scent layering and all that stuff, I like to do things that are a little bit different, but that are still, when people smell it, they're like, wow, that's interesting.
Gotcha. What is like your personal favorite product?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a little biased, so I like them all. But as far as what I use like day in and day out, I have very dry skin, which is part of the reason why I formulate my products in the way I do. I like to help people who have dry skin. So I use my hair and body butter every day.
Mhm.
And I usually use it in I that bergamot and cinnamon, which we now call Moroccan spice, is usually my go-to. And then also I have a lip butter that I
Okay.
use every day for dry lips. So yeah, we have hair and body butter, we have body oils and body scrubs, but the hair and body butter is what I use day in and day out for sure.
And can you tell listeners how they can, snap up some of those products?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a website. It's divinely-crafted.com. So the name of the business just has a hyphen in between.
Mhm.
We've been online since 2018. So that's the easiest way to do it. But also, if you're local to Baltimore City, Baltimore County, or Harford County,
Mhm.
I'm always willing to do drop offs and pickups. So if you follow us on social media, divinely.crafted, you can hit my DMs, and we set up times all the time. I have plenty of customers that strictly just do pickups. So that's always an option too.
Awesome. And kind of earlier, you were kind of touching on the importance of like sourcing like the best ingredients and kind of ethically sourcing as well. How
Mhm.
can like typical store-bought products have a negative impact on kind of the environment or even the consumer?
So, ooh, where to start? No, I'm just kidding. So I think in our current climate, I will say that over the last few years, I have noticed that most people, I think, or not most, but a lot of customers are more concerned about where their products come from. So I think that's definitely great. So I think that is encouraging companies all over to get a little greener, as they say, or
Mhm.
um, a little bit more ethical. But I do have concerns with a lot of these store bought products because um, they are able to get away with putting some harmful chemicals
Mhm.
into our products. And the average American, I think the statistic is like uses like 8 to 10 products on their skin every day. And
Mhm.
some of these products are still putting, as we know, like formaldehyde, lead. I won't say names, but we've seen companies over the past few years getting in trouble for what they've been putting into our products. So that's always been my biggest concern. And I've used my own products for a very long time now. So I think it's just when we go to these big stores, there's that concern with what's going in there and how that affects us down the road,
Mhm.
cancers, hormonal disruptions.
Mhm.
And We're seeing that a lot with our generation too, with millennials. And then also like lack of ethics with the big business practices, how they're treating their employees and how they're sourcing from anywhere. And it doesn't really matter whether or not the people who are sourcing your ingredients are paid a fair wage and things like that. So we try to focus on that at Divinely Crafted. It's important for us to use quality ingredients, organic always, fair trade.
Mhm.
And even when we can, we try to still source these ingredients not only from ethical places, but from other small Black owned businesses as well. So it's really important to me that we support each other in whichever ways possible. And I will always encourage people, no matter if you're buying my products or your food or your clothes, like shop local, shop small. It's
Mhm.
just better for the community in general.
That's awesome, and I totally agree. I think it's great for Black business to support Black business, and it's always definitely great to shop local. Um,
hmm
what has been kind of challenging about running Divinely Crafted? Like, what's been some of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, so I think initially, and it was probably the reason why it took me so long to get started in the first place was
Mhm.
um, uh, is selling, the idea of just selling yourself.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I really did was I started doing like the pop-up events and vendor events. And it's a lot to go and stand in front of people and talk about your product and have people
Definitely.
reject you and try your stuff and not like it. So
Mhm.
that was definitely a challenge in the beginning, but a necessary challenge, a very necessary challenge. Um, and then staying motivated. I'm sure any entrepreneur, small business owner, they know that's the thing. You're the only one there. So you got to
Yeah.
push yourself.
Mhm.
Your family and friends can say you're doing great, but if you're not getting up every day and doing it, it doesn't really matter. So definitely staying motivated. And then I've also, like I said, I still work a day job, quote, as I like to say. So
Mhm.
juggling the day job, the small business relationships, all that. So those have been some of the more challenging parts of it for sure.
And so what piece of advice, like speaking from, the challenges that you have faced, what's like one thing you wish you knew before becoming an entrepreneur?
hmm So I'm very fortunate in that I do have a lot of entrepreneurs around me. So I did get a lot of good advice before I
Mhm.
started. But what I will say was the just starting. I personally for a long time identified as like a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And so nothing was ever right, nothing was ever good enough. I always had to do one more thing. Um and the more I'm in this business and the longer and the more that I grow, I realize it's an excuse we tell ourselves. And it's okay, like, it's scary to take a leap of faith. But it's just the best thing to just when you have that idea, just start with it. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can
Mhm.
start with just buying the domain name of the business. You can start with taking a class or making a social media account. It's really important to just start
Mhm.
and not overthink it. You can It's okay to make mistakes. You're gonna mess because you're gonna mess up regardless. You just gotta
Yeah.
accept that. You will mess up. So mess up and learn from it
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
That's
Don't let the perfectionism stop you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I kind of self-identify as a perfectionist too. It can be a blessing and a curse, definitely.
Yeah.
But that was
Yeah.
great advice for like aspiring entrepreneurs out there. Your failure is just going to happen sometimes, but just got to
Is
learn from it.
for sure.
Um, what do you envision for the future of Divinely Crafted?
So, in the immediate future, like within the next few years, my biggest goal is to really just expand my line. Like I mentioned before, we do butters and oils and scrubs now, so it's mostly hair and body. But I do want to move more to, like I said earlier, like the medicinal side, so more healing salves and
Mm,
soaps, even like deodorants and shave creams. I just really want to expand my line. And of course, I want to do more wholesale and be in more shops and
definitely.
stores, and hopefully even like bigger stores one day, like a Whole Foods and Sprouts and things like that.
Mhm.
So definitely just expanding the line. My goal is to, I always say, I want to, everything you use in your bathroom, I want it to be divinely crafted one day.
Yeah.
So just keep expanding and growing and be a household name.
Well, I hope that happens for you.
Thank you.
Um, at the end of each like podcast, I kind of just switch things up and ask a random question.
Mhm.
And this week, the question is, if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Mm, so no judgment, but
No judgment.
thank you. One of my favorite movies, and I love to watch it with my mom, is Steel Magnolias.
Okay, that is
I
a good movie.
okay.
It's very sad, but it is a good movie.
It's so sad, but it's so good. Like Dolly Parton, come on,
Mhm.
come on.
It's
So
really,
that absolutely, I could watch that movie every day.
I think that's a great choice, honestly.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining me again. It was a pleasure doing business with you. Of
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Megan. This is fun. Thank you for
course.
having me.
Of course.